Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling a really critical and, frankly, quite difficult topic. Interpersonal violence. Our source material is quite unique. This time, it's actually developed for health professionals.
That's right. So it gives us a kind of inside look at the clinical signs, the patterns they look for, and how they approach intervention.
Yeah, across different groups, too.
Yeah.
Children, partners, older adults. It's comprehensive.
And our goal here is really to understand how this works systemically. We want to look beyond just awareness,
Right, getting into the specifics, the actual risk factors, the warning signs practitioners use.
Exactly. Especially when someone can't or feels they can't speak up directly.
And the one thread tying it all together, whether it's physical, sexual, financial abuse, is this core concept of power and control.
Absolutely central. The documentation hammers this home. It's not just isolated incidents of someone losing their temper.
No.
It's a pattern, a systematic way of maintaining dominance. And it's a huge public health issue. Understanding that dynamic is what's key.
Okay, so let's start by defining the scope. The sources list, I think, 9 different types. It really emphasizes it's not just about physical harm.
Right. It has to be broader. Of course, you have physical and sexual violence, but so much of the damage, the ongoing stuff, comes from tactics that are less visible.
Like emotional or psychological abuse.
Exactly. The constant put-downs, the shaming designed to erode someone's self-worth,
Yeah.
making them feel small, crazy even.
Yeah, and things like financial abuse, controlling money, stopping someone working.
Or even cultural or spiritual abuse. That's one people don't always think about.
What does that look like in practice?
It's attacking someone's core identity. Maybe stopping them from practicing their religion, or destroying things that are culturally important to them, or preventing them from connecting with their community, their support systems. It's deeply isolating.
The sources are also careful to define the roles. Not just bad guy, but the perpetrator.
Yes, clinically defined as someone who fundamentally prioritizes their own needs above everything and everyone else.
And then the vulnerable person.
Right. Someone at higher risk because of illness, maybe dependency or past trauma. And importantly, violence risk really spikes for them during times of stress or crisis.
The knock-on effects, the comorbidity, are just staggering when you look at the data. We're talking serious, long-term mental health impacts.
Oh, absolutely. Long after bruises heal, high rates of depression, suicidal thoughts,
PTSD.
chronic PTSD symptoms, yes, and dissociation. Also, substance abuse often develops as a coping mechanism. Paranoia, too.
And you mentioned somatization earlier.
Yes, that's when deep psychological pain shows up as physical symptoms. Things like chronic headaches or pelvic pain, digestive issues, with no clear medical cause.
Wow.
It shows just how integrated the trauma becomes. Treatment really needs to see the whole picture.
And maybe the most chilling part for intimate partner violence is how predictable it can be, this cycle of violence.
It's a terrifyingly effective pattern. It keeps the victim locked in because it mixes the abuse with periods of, apparent calm or even affection.
Making it harder to leave.
Much harder. It feeds into hope and confusion. It's a manipulative structure.
So phase 1, tension building, what does that look like?
This is that simmering stage. Lots of accusations, maybe arguments. The silent treatment is common. Belittling comments.
The source material uses the phrase walking on eggshells.
That's exactly the feeling. The victim tries desperately to keep the peace, becomes overly compliant, tries to anticipate the perpetrator's needs.
And starts blaming themselves.
Very often. If only I hadn't said that, or I've kept the house cleaner. And this phase, it could stretch on for months, even years.
Years, until it breaks. Phase 2, the acute battering incident.
Right, the explosion, often triggered by something completely minor, disproportionate.
The dropped glass, anything.
Exactly. And the violence itself can last, hours. Those sources note something really tragic. If the victim tries to fight back,
It can make it worse.
it often fuels the perpetrator's rage, Afterwards, the victim is often in shock, maybe delays getting help.
Which leads to phase 3, the one that seems so counterintuitive, the honeymoon phase.
Ah, yes. The switch flips. Suddenly the abuser is loving, remorseful, crying, apologizing.
Promising it'll never happen again. Buying gifts, maybe?
All of that. And this isn't just a relief phase. It's crucial for maintaining the cycle. It resets the emotional baseline.
How so?
Because the victim clings to that remorse. They want to believe the promises. It makes them vulnerable to thinking, okay, maybe I did push him too far. But he's sorry now. He's changed.
And that's when they might drop charges, if any were laid.
Very common. The hope overrides the reality of the danger.
And underpinning this whole cycle is the power and control wheel. It maps out the tactics used.
Exactly. It shows it's not just about the hitting. It's about maintaining that power.
So things like intimidation.
Yeah, smashing things, showing off weapons, using threatening looks or gestures, and isolation, controlling who they see, where they go, monitoring calls or texts.
Emotional abuse, too, like the gaslighting you mentioned, making her think she's crazy.
Classic tactic. Name-calling, constant criticism, humiliation, and economic abuse is a big one.
Preventing her from working.
Or making it impossible to keep a job.
Yeah.
Taking her money, giving her an allowance, not letting her access family funds. It all serves to keep her dependent and under control.
Okay, this next part feels really practical, especially for listeners who might interact with people, in potentially difficult situations. The clinical indicators.
Right. These are the subtle clues, the things healthcare providers learn to spot when someone isn't saying anything directly.
Right.
The nonverbal signals.
And timing is one.
A big one. A noticeable delay between when an injury happened and when they seek help. Showing up maybe a day later for something that clearly needed immediate attention.
And vague health complaints.
Yeah, those chronic, nonspecific things we talked about with somatization headaches, fatigue, stomach issues, insomnia, but also just general aches and pains that don't have a clear explanation. It can be a sign of underlying distress.
Oh, how they interact.
You might see someone who is a vague historian, really reluctant or unable to give clear details about how an injury occurred.
Or maybe the partner is there.
And the partner is overbearing, answers for the patient, dismisses their concerns, makes decisions about their care without consulting them. That's a huge red flag.
And the most obvious one, I suppose, the injury just doesn't match the story.
Exactly. A black eye from walking into a door might be plausible once, but patterns raise suspicion.
So if these signs are there, or if the cycle seems clear, when is the risk highest? When should intervention be most urgent?
Good question. The sources point to two particularly high-risk times. First, pregnancy. Violence often starts or gets much worse during pregnancy.
Why is that?
Theories vary: added stress, jealousy, asserting control over the woman's body. But the correlation is strong.
Okay. And the second high-risk time?
When the vulnerable person tries to gain independence or actually leave the relationship.
That's when the perpetrator feels they're losing control.
Precisely. And that loss of control can trigger extreme, sometimes lethal, violence. It's the most dangerous time.
So if these indicators are present, professionals have tools like the SAFE questions.
Right. It's a mnemonic framework to guide that difficult conversation, focused on immediate safety.
Okay, let's break that down. S is for.
S is stress safety, asking directly, but gently, do you feel safe in your relationship? Is there anything making you concerned for your safety right now?
A.
A is afraid, abused, more direct. Have you ever been threatened or hurt by your partner? Has anyone forced you to do anything sexual you didn't want to do?
F is for.
F is friends, family. Assessing support. Are your friends or family aware of what's happening? Do you think they could support you?
And finally, E.
E is emergency plan. Looking ahead. Do you have a safe place you could go? Would you like help finding resources like a shelter or making a safety plan?
It's very structured, very practical, moving towards action.
Yes, the goal is immediate safety assessment and planning.
Let's shift slightly to focus on older adult abuse. The power and control dynamic is still there, but the vulnerabilities look a bit different.
They do. Often it centers on declining health, physical or mental. Cognitive impairment, like dementia or confusion, is a major risk factor.
And dependency.
Huge factor. Dependency on the perpetrator, who is often the caregiver, maybe an adult child or spouse. Social isolation makes it worse, too. If they don't see many other people, who will notice?
And sometimes the caregiver themselves might be struggling.
Yes, caregiver stress is a real issue, sometimes complicated by substance abuse or their own mental health problems. It doesn't excuse abuse, but it's often part of the picture.
The statistics from institutional settings in the sources were pretty sobering.
They really are. 20% of staff reporting they witnessed abuse of residents in long-term care.
And 31% witnessing rough handling.
It's a stark reminder that abuse happens across settings, not just within families at home.
In terms of intervention for older adults, what's key?
The sources say the single strongest indicator is simply the older person telling someone. Believing them is critical.
Right.
Interventions then focus on safety, involving protective services if needed, but always trying to balance the person's autonomy, their right to make their own decisions with safety concerns. Mandatory reporting laws often come into play here, which adds another layer of complexity.
Okay, so regardless of age or specific type of abuse, the standard of care that's emerging is trauma-informed care.
Absolutely. Given everything we've discussed about the long-term psychological impacts, you have to approach care through the lens of trauma.
What does that mean in practice?
It means understanding that the person's past trauma influences their current behavior, their health, how they interact with services. So the approach emphasizes safety, physical and emotional trustworthiness, transparency,
And empowerment.
critically, sharing power, giving the survivor control over their treatment choices, and crucially, not forcing them to retell their traumatic story over and over again to different people, which can be re-traumatizing.
That makes sense, especially considering the barriers to disclosure. Why don't people just leave or tell someone? It's not that simple.
Not at all. There's immense shame, often. Fear of retaliation against themselves or their children. Economic dependency we talked about.
Emotional dependency, too.
Yes. And perpetrators who actively isolate and monitor them. Plus, cultural factors or stigma can make seeking help feel impossible.
So the system responding needs to be aware of all that.
Exactly. It requires a non-judgmental stance, collaboration between different agencies, healthcare, social work, law enforcement, community groups.
And careful documentation.
Very careful. Accurate, objective documentation is vital, especially if legal action follows. Following rules about forensic evidence, consent. It's complex, but necessary.
It's about creating a safety net, really.
A supportive web, yes, but one that respects the survivor's agency and lets them lead their own recovery path. So if we boil down the key takeaway from this deep dive, it's really about shifting perspective. Stop seeing interpersonal violence as random acts of aggression and start recognizing it as a system. A predictable, cyclical pattern driven entirely by that need for power and control. Understanding how the tension-building phase works and how vital that honeymoon phase is to keeping the cycle going. That's crucial for any kind of effective intervention.
Yeah, absolutely. And for you listening, those clinical indicators we discussed, the delay in seeking help, the vague pains, the partner who seems too involved or controlling these, aren't just for doctors.
No.
They're signals you might notice in your own life among friends or family. They can be red flags, even in just casual interactions.
That's a really important point. Awareness isn't just passive.
Okay, one final thought to leave you with, something the source material touches on directly. We've focused on the victims, the survivors, the perpetrators. But the documentation also points out the impact on the helpers. Healthcare providers, social workers, anyone constantly exposed to these stories, they face secondary trauma. Burnout is incredibly high.
It is. It's emotionally draining, demanding work.
So the question we want to leave you mulling over is this. What kind of boundaries, emotional, practical, do people in supporting roles need, whether you're a professional or just a friend or family member trying to help?
Right. How do you sustain that support effectively without depleting yourself, without compromising your own well-being? Because you can't pour from an empty cup. Thinking about that self-awareness, those boundaries, it's essential if we want sustainable support systems.
Something to think about. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.